So the Oscars are coming up this weekend, and there has been some controversy about some of the films that have been nominated for Best Picture this year. Well, at least there's been controversy about one specific film that's been nominated for Best Picture this year. And that got me thinking, like, what are the voters even thinking? Like, what are they voting on? What is the criteria for a Best Picture nomination that they are like going through in their head when they're voting for these films? Because it seems a little foreign to me. And that got me thinking even more, what would I be voting for in a Best Picture nom? Like, what's the criteria that I would prioritize if I was voting for Best Picture? What am I looking for in a film? What do I care about in a movie? And that's what I'm going to do today. I'm going to try and challenge myself and like explore what I think about movies by using this tier list, a tier list of criteria I would use if I was voting for Best Picture at the Oscars. So let's get to it. Okay, so here we go. The first criteria is character, and I'm going to include performances by the actors in this category as well. So it's character/performances because I think the performances go hand in hand with the character of the film. And as you can see, I picked a picture of Anora for this specific thumbnail because I think the director of Anora, Sean Baker, is one of the prime examples of a director who really cares about his characters. From his earlier movies, Takeout to Florida Project to Anora, he really cares about creating a complex character on screen that we can relate with, that we can disagree with, but also sympathize and empathize with. And Anora is no exception. I mean, just imagine this movie without the main character, Anora. Just imagine that everything else is the same. The cinematography is the same. The sound design's the same. The editing's the same. Everything is the same besides you don't have a strong character at the forefront of this movie. If you don't have that strong character in this specific movie, then it's not going to be a good movie at all. If you have a bad performance from your lead actress in this movie, it's not going to be a good movie because that's who you are seeing on screen the entire time. So a simple way to put it is a bad character in an otherwise great movie will ruin that movie, at least for me. And vice versa, if you have a really great character at the forefront of your movie and your cinematography sucks and your editing sucks, I would still be interested in it because that is one of the main reasons I watch movies is for the character, because I want to feel something and I want to live vicariously through a character on screen doing things that I could never do or even dream of doing. So for that reason, I am putting character in the S tier. And this is one way I'm kind of thinking about all these criteria is you can put it like this. Will a bad fill in the blank make an otherwise great movie bad? And vice versa, can a great fill in the blank make an otherwise mediocre movie good or even great? So let's take the next category down here, editing, and use this formula. So will bad editing make an otherwise great movie bad? It's a little hard to say because it just depends on how bad the editing is. Because when we're talking about films that are in the running for the Best Picture nom, none of them are going to have like really, really bad editing. None of them are going to be edited like a student short film. When it comes to big budget movies, the editing is usually solid, even if the editing could be better in certain circumstances. Take The Wild Robot from this year, for instance, because I personally think there are a couple instances in that film that have some questionable editing where something is happening in one frame and then the next frame, it's almost like there's a time jump, almost like a jump cut, and then something else is happening. But does that affect my overall rating of the movie on Letterboxd? If those 2 or 3 instances were fixed, in my opinion, would I rate it higher? No, I don't think so, because the rest of the movie is so well edited and so well put together. However, yes, if the entire movie was like that, then I would rank it lower on my list. But on the other hand, does great editing make an otherwise mediocre movie great? Well, I'm not saying this movie is otherwise mediocre. I love this movie for a lot of different reasons, but let's take Everything Everywhere All at Once, for instance, because I think that the editing of that movie is one of the main aspects for why I love that movie. It's fast, it's unique, it's experimental, it's creative. It adds a lot of energy and it adds to the character of the film and it adds to the plot of the film. If you take that editing style away from that movie, I do think that I would probably rank that movie lower than I do now. But here's the thing, let's frame it like this. Let's say that I am a voter for the Oscars, and I am essentially looking at the top 100 films of the year and determining which 10 of those should be in the Best Picture nomination category. And for me, I just don't think there's that much of a gap between the worst editing of those top 100 films and the best editing of those top 100 films for me to like really give it that much weight. Whereas character, I think there is a big difference between the character and the performance of the worst of those top 100 films and the best of those top 100 films. I think there's a big difference in the character of Anora and the rest of the Best Picture noms, or most of the Best Picture noms. I think there are only a couple films this year that have great character and performance. And so I think the gap is much wider in that category. And so that's kind of how I'm looking at it. I hope that's not too confusing. So for that reason, editing is very important, but I don't think there's that big of a gap between the best and the worst of the top 100. The next criteria is Acclaim, and that just basically means all of the awards leading up to the Oscars that this film has won, do they influence my decision to put them in the Best Picture category at the Oscars? And as much as I would like to say, no, it shouldn't impact me at all. Take Emilia Perez, for instance. I don't think that movie should be anywhere close to the Best Picture category of the Oscars, even though it won a Golden Globe. As much as I want to say that that would never affect my decision, I recognize that we are social creatures and that my opinions aren't always the best opinions on first take or ever. So I think kind of having a little bit of humility in yourself and looking at a film that is getting a lot of awards that you might not like and giving it a second chance, or trying to just try to appreciate what other people see about that movie, I think is a good thing. And so I do think the Acclaim could have some impact, but it's not very much impact at all. So I'm gonna put it at D. Next, we have success, and that is just basically how much money did this movie make, and should that matter for your assessment of it as a Best Picture nom? And again, at first glance, I would say no, the amount of money a movie makes shouldn't have any bearing on whether it's a good movie or not. But is that really true? I mean, I don't think that bad movies typically make billions of dollars. But I also wouldn't put Deadpool and Wolverine in the Best Picture nom. I need to think about that a little bit more, though. Like, why wouldn't I put it in the Best Picture nomination? Is it just because it's a comedy? Is it just because it's a superhero movie? And maybe I do need to reassess my criteria here. You know, I'm starting to think a little bit more, and I'm kind of wanting to save this one for the end and do a little thought experiment at the end with Deadpool and Wolverine specifically. So stick around for that. Let's go into the next criteria, music. The thing about music is, yes, I love it. I absolutely love it when movies have a great score. I think that it can elevate scenes and elevate emotions and elevate characters and elevate the story in a way that just visuals can't. But I also recognize the fact that a great movie doesn't really need music. Take No Country for Old Men, for example. That movie didn't have any music, and I think it's one of the best movies of all time. But again, technically, if that movie had bad music, if the Coen brothers decided to just pump it with really high volume EDM music through the entire thing and you couldn't hear anything the actors were saying, obviously that would ruin the movie. So I guess technically bad music can make a really great movie bad, but it's again the matter of, you're not going to see that kind of a decision in movies, especially not in the top 100 movies of the year. So really, I think it comes down to, can great music make an otherwise mediocre movie great? And I do think that music can make scenes better, but it can also serve as a band-aid for bad scenes. If you have a scene that doesn't really feel right without music, and you slap music over it, I do think that will make the scene a little bit better. It can mask some mistakes, but is it really going to make that scene better? I don't think so. If you have a mediocre movie and a great soundtrack, I'm just not sure that adds to the thing that I'm looking for in a film. I kind of want to put music at C. Editor Kevin here. Yes, I am a big old dim-dum because I forgot that there is literally a movie in this year's Best Picture category where the music elevates the movie into that Best Picture category, aka Wicked. Without the music, that movie would not be in the Best Picture category. But with that great music, I do think it creates something that is greater than the sum of its parts and is definitely worthy of a nomination. So I am editing this to be in the B category along with editing. The next criteria we have is action, and this is another one that I don't think movies need action, obviously. Like, most movies that get nominated for the Best Picture category don't have any action at all, but a movie that has great action that does it right is pretty amazing, and I think that a great example of that is Mad Max Fury Road, which was nominated for Best Picture, I think primarily because of the groundbreaking action that it had in it. And I think part of the reason for this is that in order to get all of that great action on screen, you do have to have a very genius understanding of the filmmaking process from a technical level and a storytelling and editing level. And I think that you should consider that when you are determining whether a picture is good and whether it should be in Best Picture. And so I think action kind of goes in the same category as editing for me. And it goes hand in hand with editing because great action is well edited for the most part. I mean, I guess that's not entirely true, but in today's world, when you see good action, it is partly due because of the editing. But I think the action part of that movie is what elevates it from a good movie to a Best Picture nom. Next, we have rewatchability, and this one's also an interesting one because if part of me wants to say that if a movie doesn't create in me the desire to watch it again, then it's not a good movie. Part of me wants to say that. But I don't believe that, because there have been plenty of movies that I've seen this year that I don't really want to see again, including The Brutalist, which might win Best Picture. I think The Brutalist is a great film, but it's not really one that I want to see again. It's not one I desire to go to the theater and watch again, partly because it's really long and has an intermission. But I don't know. It's almost like I'm separating my favorite movie and what I think is the best movie. That's ultimately what it comes down to, is that I just like some movies because of maybe one or two specific things about them. But best movies, best picture noms, I think they fulfill more of the criteria on this list than some of my favorite movies, if that makes sense. But you guys challenge me on that in the comments if you want, because part of me is like, isn't the point of movies to like get people to watch them, to want to watch them? But then on the other hand, I'm like, I don't know, the point of a painting is not to get someone to just come back over and over again and look at that painting. It's to express a message. It's to express an idea or a theme maybe once, and it stays with that person the rest of their life, even if they don't see the painting again. So I don't know. I feel like I'm a mess on this one. I think I'm going to put it at C, though. So the next criteria we have is the campaigning for the film. And for those of you who don't know, the campaigning for a film is basically the production company that owns the film will typically just like send out letters and send out maybe even gift baskets to the voters for the Oscars, and they will basically try to bribe them. Basically just be like, here, vote for my movie. And I think that's stupid, so I'm putting campaigning in D. The voters of the Oscars should not be making their decisions on which movies to include in the consideration for Best Picture based on which billboard they see on the street that says for your consideration. Like, I just go watch more films. Like, why do you need to see a billboard that says for your consideration for you to consider a movie? That's dumb in my opinion. Sorry. The next criteria we have is cultural significance, and I think that cultural significance is an important part of a movie, but the problem is, what do people consider to be culturally significant? Because if you take the movie Emilia Perez, again, a lot of the voters for the Golden Globes thought that movie was culturally significant, but a lot of the audience members, a lot of the community in Mexico and a lot of the trans community thought it was culturally insensitive. And so I think it is good for the voters to just be careful and not put a film in the Best Picture category because it is about something culturally significant, but because it is culturally significant. And I think those are two different things. So for films that are actually significant to our culture, I think that is a very important part of the filmmaking process. It is a very important part of art. Art is one of the avenues we have to challenge the status quo and to really speak to the depths of our soul and society. And so for that reason, I think I'm going to put it at A. The next criteria is sound. And this is another one of those criteria that obviously bad sound is going to ruin a film. Like, you just go watch some student short films. You will notice the sound over everything. The sound will sound bad, and that will take you completely out of the movie. But again, the thing is, if we're viewing this from the perspective of, I'm looking at the top 100 movies and determining which 10 of those should be in the Best Picture category, they're not going to have bad sound. I'm sorry, they're just not going to have bad sound. And the thing about sound also is that good sound design is supposed to just kind of, you're not supposed to notice it in a lot of cases. Good sound design is supposed to not distract you from the story and the characters. Good sound design is supposed to kind of engross you in an almost hypnotizing way so you don't notice it. So can good sound make a mediocre movie great, like editing and action can? I don't see sound having as big of an impact on me personally as editing and action. For me, I can't imagine a movie that is just like, I'm super engrossed in it because of the sound. So for that reason, I'm going to put it next to music. But again, sound is a very important part. I'm not saying sound is not an important part of a movie. Sound is one of the most important parts of a movie. But again, the framework with which I'm looking at it is like, I just don't think sound can elevate movies in the same way that other things can. Next, we have cinematography, and let me just come out and say it. I am a sucker for cinematography, sucker for good cinematography, because I love doing cinematography myself and creating images that are pretty to look at, because at its core, filmmaking is a visual medium, and great movies, I think, can be elevated by cinematography, aka Blade Runner 2049. I don't think that's a great movie in terms of character or story or cultural significance, but I do think that the cinematography elevates it and kind of creates this atmosphere that you can't replicate in real life. And I think that is something to consider. If a filmmaker is using the visual medium to create a visual space that you can reside in and just like want to be in, I think that's an important part of a film for me. However, I don't think that a movie needs great cinematography to be a good movie. Take Tangerine, for example, another Sean Baker movie. It was shot on an iPhone, and I absolutely love this movie because, again, it has great character and it has a good story. The cinematography is not bad. It follows the rules of cinematography. It is done by competent people, but it is not great. So I think it's kind of around the same thing as editing and action for me. It's probably more than editing and action, though. It's going to be at the top. So let's go to the next one. Originality. I went to a film festival last weekend, and before last weekend, I would have said that originality was a very important thing for me. But I watched a couple films in that film festival that were very original, but very poorly done. They were just weird, and it seemed like they got into the film festival just because they were weird, and I don't think that's a good reason to put something in a film festival just because it's weird. And so I do think that originality cannot make up for the things that I find more important in a film, like character and story, but I do value originality when I think about it. I'm just like, I don't want to see the same thing over and over again, right? Just imagine if musical biopics won Best Picture every year. Like, that's boring. So I do value originality. It's just hard for me to gauge how much I value it because it depends on the type of originality. Is it good original or is it bad original? Like in the case of Everything Everywhere All at Once, I think that's a very original movie, and that is one of the reasons why I really love that film. But it's also got a good script. So I don't know. I'm going to put originality in B. Next, we have the themes of the movie, and I'm just going to tell you right off the bat, I think this is an S tier for me because I love going into films and watching the films and coming away with something to think about, something that is more than just the story. Because when a film is just a straightforward 3-act structure story, I'm entertained a lot of times, but I don't really think about it for the rest of the day after I'm out of the theater. But when a movie is deep and has themes and it gives you something to think about that is related to your life or society, then I will think about that movie for days after going to the theater. An example of that is The Substance. I think it is a very deep movie in terms of the themes because it is about our perceptions of ourselves. It is about the way society perceives us. It is about our eternal struggle for youth. It is about addiction. It is about so many different things. And I think that is one of the things that I am primarily looking for in a film, is just something to think about. But I will say the caveat to this is that most movies have themes. Most movies have some kind of theme that is lurking beneath the surface of the story. However, I mean, it's really just comes down to a subjective preference for those particular themes. But really what I'm saying is movies that I connect with on a thematic level, I'm going to rate higher than ones that I don't. Next, we have the story. And yes, I think the story is king. I personally think that every picture nominated for Best Picture should have a story. Like, it should have a good story. I'm not saying that film in general has to have a story. There are plenty of movies out there that don't have a story in the typical 3-act structure kind of way. And I love that, honestly. I love things like a ghost story. It doesn't have really a story to it. It's a meditation. It's a poetic meditation on life. And I love that about that film. But then again, like, what even is a story? It's kind of subjective. Not every movie has to follow the same structure. So, I mean, I don't know. Maybe I'm not specific enough about what I mean by that, but I think it's important. The next category we have is humor, and it's an interesting one because at first glance, I'm like, yeah, I don't think comedies should be in Best Picture. And maybe that's a really stupid opinion to have because I think Barbie should have been in Best Picture last year, and that was a comedy, right? That was a comedy, but it was a deep comedy. It had like a emotional meaning. It had an impact. It had good characters. I wouldn't put The Hangover in the Best Picture category, even though I think The Hangover is hilarious. So it's kind of like that thing of, I don't think really great humor can make up for the rest of the film, but I do think that, something like Barbie, I'm trying to imagine, like, if Barbie didn't have any humor in it, would it still be as good? And I'm like, no, it wouldn't be as good. It would be boring. So yeah, this one's an interesting one. I don't know. Let me know in the comments what you guys think about this one. Where should humor go? I don't think it's as important as camera and editing and originality and action, honestly. So I think it might be a little bit more important than sound or music to me, though. Next, we have emotion, and I will tell you right now, if a movie makes me cry, it automatically gets 4 stars on my letterbox, at least. And because that is one of the things that I am looking for in a movie. That's probably the primary thing that I am looking for in a movie, is I want a movie to make me feel something. Like, I'm primarily talking about like a crying kind of emotion here. If a movie makes me feel that thing, you know, that thing in my heart, it's going to be high up on the list for me. So I think that technically, even if every one of these other criteria weren't in the movie and the movie made me cry, I think I would still really consider it for Best Picture. But the question is, can a movie make me cry without all of these other criteria? I think not. I do think it's an S tier category for me. So the final criteria is one we said we'd come back to, and that is success. And I'd like to do a little bit of testing, of thought experiment with Deadpool and Wolverine, since that made over $1 billion. Does the fact that this movie made over $1 billion affect my decision to put it in the Best Picture category? Because isn't success at its core a representation of the quality of the film? Isn't the fact that so many people want to see the film a representation of it being a good film? And I do think this is a good movie. I think it's a good movie. But let's go through this criteria and determine why I think it's a good movie. What are the main reasons I think this is a good movie? Primarily, I think it's a good movie because of the humor, which is in C. I also think it's a good movie because of the rewatchability, which is also in C. I think it's a good movie because of the action, which is in B. I think it's a good movie. Is it original? I don't know if it's original. I mean, it's kind of original because it's original in the sense that we don't see movies like this very much, but it's not original in the sense that it's based on Marvel. So I'm not sure what to do about that one. The editing, I don't think the editing stands out. The camera work, I don't think that the camera work stands out. The cultural significance, no, it doesn't have cultural significance in pretty much any way, besides the fact that Ryan Reynolds and Blake Lively are in it, and there's some controversy going on with them right now. But story, I think the story's fine. I don't think it stands out in story. I don't think it stands out in themes. And then the character, I mean, the character is good in a sense. The character is, this one's an interesting one. I think Deadpool is a very fun character. I think he's one of the best superhero characters we have seen, the best portrayal of a superhero we've seen on screen. But that's not really what I mean when I say character, if that makes sense. Ooh, and the performance is good too. The performance is good. Like, I like Ryan Reynolds as Deadpool. I guess that's not really what I'm saying when I say character. What am I saying? What I'm saying when I say character? No, I mean, you guys might have caught me. You guys might have caught me in a contradiction here. I mean, what do you guys think? Is Deadpool a good character? Like, I think it has all of the building blocks to be a good character, but for some reason I'm not connecting the dots. But I've gone on too long. And honestly, I think Deadpool and Wolverine, when I think about it, is actually closer to being a Best Picture nom this year than people would give it credit for. I think if it did one more thing very well, like if it was culturally significant, or if the camera or the editing was just like very good, or if the action wasn't as CGI or something, I think it could maybe have been considered. But I mean, that's still a tough one. I think it matters more than you think it does, so I'm going to put it in C. I hope I didn't ramble too much in that video. I'm sure I did. I don't know if you guys got anything from that video, but please let me know in the comments how you would rank these. What is the most important thing in a movie for you? I think it's worth considering, and I think it's worth even me considering more, because I'm starting to think more about what is it that I'm actually looking for in a film. And I think this S tier is like the main thing, but I don't know what to say. Just comment below and stuff. And I'm looking forward to the Oscars. Okay, bye.